Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in beautiful Los Angeles, California. How's everyone doing today? Hope you're well, hope you're happy, hope you're having some fun. Today is World Turtle Day, and we're gonna celebrate over here at Zoo Nerd by talking a bit about this amazing group of animals, the turtles. For starters, today is a 20th anniversary of World Turtle Day. It was started by a place not too far from where I live here in Los Angeles, up in Malibu, California, called the American Tortoise Rescue. And they specialize in helping people who have turtles or tortoises as pets, who may no longer want them and need to find a new home for them. They help match up a new home. During their time, they've been able to help over 4,000 turtles and tortoises find new homes. So that's pretty commendable on their behalf, especially since it's run by a husband and a wife, and I don't think they have anybody else helping them out. So pretty impressive of them. But what they started with World Turtle Day has now become a global phenomenon with many zoos, conservation organizations, and many different countries celebrating turtles and tortoises. Now here at Zoo Nerd, I have done critter chats about sea turtles and the giant tortoises before. So I've already covered both the two big groups at the larger end of the scale of turtles and tortoises. But there are still so many different species that we can talk about. Today we're going to talk a little bit about turtles in general, what the difference is between a turtle and a tortoise, and there's also this other weird word called a terrapin that you may have heard of. I'll try to explain some of that, and also talk just about ways that we can all help out turtles and tortoises. For starters, science has identified over 328 species of turtles and tortoises in the world. If that's a huge number to you, that's impressive, right? That's a lot of different kinds of turtles and tortoises. And although I certainly don't know all of them, nor have I seen them all, I have pretty good experience with a broad range of individuals across that spectrum. So let's start by talking about how turtles and tortoises, I'm going to use the term turtle as a broad term to include all of them. Turtles, tortoise, terrapins. Science also uses that word to describe them all. Turtle is the big group. Some are specifically tortoises or terrapins, but they are all turtles. For starters, they are reptiles. So that means that they have three unique things that all reptiles have, and that is that they lay eggs, they have scaly bodies, and they rely on outside sources to maintain their body temperatures, or they're ectothermic. Sometimes we call that cold-blooded. But that just means that they need things like the sun or other warm things to warm them up out in their natural habitat. And if they're feeling warm, they may retreat to cooler areas like shady spots, mud wallows, or deeper down in the water column to cool down if they're feeling a bit too warm. So as far as the different words used to describe turtles, turtle, tortoise, terrapin, turtles is kind of the big term, but turtles also are specifically the ones who spend most of their lives in water. They're the ones with webbed feet, so skin between their digits on their toes, and that's used for swimming. They also bask in the sun, so they will come out of the water to kind of heat up, and sometimes if it's cold weather where they live, they will burrow down into the mud to kind of hibernate. It's actually called torpor, but we're not going to get into all of that right now. But they'll kind of go into a little bit of a rest period during cold months because they can't get as warm as they need to be. They'll hide out in the mud. Now, tortoises are specifically the land dwellers. They don't really go swimming. They don't spend much time in water. They'll sometimes come to water to drink, or they love mud wallows, most of them anyway, and they will use mud to help them cool down, especially the big guys. But they are typically vegetarians, so they are plant eaters. I don't know offhand of any tortoises that eat meat at all, although there might be one or two out there that do. I'm not an expert in all things. Tortoises also, their feet are more stumpy, so they're kind of rounded. They're kind of thicker feet, and they're made for walking on land. And they're usually a bit slow, but they can actually move at pretty surprising paces considering their size, considering their age, and sometimes their ability to move is quite surprising. They will also dig burrows, but typically to go into places to cool down. Most noticeably are the desert tortoises. A lot of tortoises live in kind of hotter climates anyway, so they'll go underground or into shade or mud to cool down when it gets too warm. So there's another word out there called terrapin. Terrapins are typically a turtle that spends more time on land, but also lots of time in water. They typically live in swampy areas, and it's sometimes in species names. So sometimes they're called a such and such turtle, sometimes a such and such terrapin, sometimes a such and such tortoise. So you'll see the terrapin word out there a bit. It usually refers to an animal that spends about half of its time in water, half of its time on land. Whereas the word turtle, typically more water, tortoise, more land. Terrapin, right there in the middle. So this group of animals, turtles, tortoises, terrapins, they have been around on Earth for a very long time. Fossil records indicate that they've been here for 220 million years. So that definitely puts them in the time frame that they lived here on Earth during the time of the dinosaurs. And some scientists have said that they haven't changed all that much during that time. Although certainly size differences have happened, and certain species that were alive then are no longer alive now. Primarily their same form and function are very similar to what lived during the time of the dinosaurs. One thing I found out today that I had never really thought about, but it was certainly interesting to me, is that tortoises, turtles, this whole group, turtles, are the only animals that have a backbone that also have shells. And I got thinking about it, what are other animals with shells? Oh, there's crabs have shells, oysters have shells, snails have shells. Many other animals have shells. None of those animals have bones. So turtles are the only animals that have both shells and a skeleton of bone. And turtle shells, a lot of people, because of cartoons, think that turtles can leave their shells or run around without their shells. That is not the case. The shell is part of the turtle or tortoise. It is living tissue. It is connected to both their rib cage and their spinal column. Their shell is actually bones. Depending on the species, it's usually around 60 different bones covered in keratin. Now, you've heard me talk about keratin before. Keratin is the same material that our fingernails and our hair is made of. Turtles and tortoises have it on their shells. That is what their shell outer layer is made of, and on the inside layer, it is bones. So when a turtle or tortoise dies, the shell remains like a skeleton for quite some time. And that's because it does have that bony interior. Now, even though their shell is kind of their outer protection and is made of bone and hard materials, they do have nerves through their shells, and they can feel things that touch their shells. I worked with tortoises at the Phoenix Zoo quite a bit. The big guys, the Galapagos tortoises, and I may have told this when I did the Critter Chat on giant tortoises, but when we would first go into the exhibit with them, the first thing I would do is I would walk up to them and I would put my hand very lightly on their shell and tell them hello. That way they got both a physical, tactile touch and a verbal, vocal hello from me and that let them know that I was there, so that they didn't need to be scared if they then sensed other movement from me, or I let them know I was there so that they wouldn't get scared of something else possibly being around them. Now they definitely can feel through their shell, and they will often respond to touch of their shell as well. The big guys I worked with in Phoenix were mostly Galapagos tortoises and also some Aldabra tortoises. I encourage you to go listen to that critter chat on giant tortoises. It was one of the first I did, has some really good information. I also did another critter chat on sea turtles, so go back and re-watch or re-listen to those to catch some information on those two specific groups of turtles. But as you touch a tortoise's shell or turtle shell, they will often respond. That if they're asleep, they'll wake up, they'll kind of move around, they'll look to see who's touching them, that kind of thing. So they do have good sense of touch in that harder shell. So some turtles can pull into their shells, specifically some of the big guys, the giant tortoises, can pull their head and neck in, but not their feet. Their feet kind of stay out. Some of the smaller turtles and tortoises can pull kind of everything in to be a little safe, and some can't pull anything in. It really depends on the anatomy of the species of the turtle and tortoise. Some don't have a lot of space in their shell. Some have very small shells that are kind of flat. Some have bigger domed shells. And usually to pull everything in, they have to have a way of displacing other things. Typically that means they let the air out of their lungs to be able to scrunch their head down into their shell. Some other species, especially aquatic turtles, have really long necks, and instead of pulling their head in, they kind of like lay their head to the side, and their long neck helps them kind of tuck their head back against their shell for protection. So let's talk a little bit about how big and how small turtles can be. So the smallest is a species of tortoise called the speckled Cape tortoise, and it's only about 3.5 inches long as an adult. And it only weighs about 5 ounces. So very, very small. It could fit in the palm of your hand, a really little tortoise species. The biggest of all turtles is a sea turtle that is specifically called the leatherback sea turtle. And the biggest one they've ever measured was over 8 feet in length and weighed in at 1,800 pounds. So turtles have a huge size range, from the little guy that can sit into your hand to the guy that's as big as like a Volkswagen Bug car, size-wise. So pretty huge to pretty small. Some of the giant tortoises, the land dwellers, can live over 150 years. That's beginning to be pretty well documented with both the Galapagos tortoises and the Aldabra tortoises. Although more research needs to be done to kind of give a closer age range of them, they know that they can live over 150, with a couple individuals surpassing 200 years, which is pretty impressive. Many of the other species of turtles and tortoises also live a pretty long time. Even some of the little ones that people keep as pets can often live 30 or 40 years, and many of the species just bigger than that can live into their 70s. So turtles and tortoises can live a very long time, especially for how small they are. Most smaller animals don't typically live that long. So something that's kind of interesting, and I'd heard about this before, so I really dove into it more in research, about some turtles being able to breathe underwater. I thought that this was kind of an interesting situation, and I wanted to know if it's true, and it is. Not all of them can do it, but some can do it, and there's 2 different ways that they can do it by breathing underwater. So some are able to pump water through their mouth, and inside their mouth and around that area, they have a lot of a huge like net of blood vessels. And with all those blood vessels right there, they're able to extract oxygen directly out of the water. Water is, of course, hydrogen mixed with oxygen. That's what makes water. And so oxygen is naturally in all water. They can pull some of that oxygen out through their blood vessels in their mouth. But there's another way some of them can do this, and they tend to be species from Australia and that area of the world, and the Aussies have come up with the term called bum breathers. So yeah, they can essentially gather oxygen from the water through what we would call their bum. Science calls it a cloaca or a cloaca. It's the same purpose as a bum, but they'll bring water in, and then the blood vessels in that area can actually extract some of the oxygen out of the water and use it for them to obtain oxygen while they're hiding out underneath the water. It's a pretty impressive skill. I don't know of any other animals that can directly do that other than amphibians and fish and other lower forms of life. So a turtle may be the highest functioning type of organism that has the ability to extract oxygen directly from the water. When turtles start out, we talked about this a little bit earlier, that they lay eggs, and depending on the species, some species only lay one egg when they lay eggs. Some species lay up to 200 eggs, so it really varies quite a bit depending on the species. And some individuals can lay multiple clutches or groups of eggs during a breeding season. The eggs can be kind of two different forms. Some are kind of elongated, more like this shape, longer than like a chicken egg, and they're kind of a leathery shell. And some are more round. Sea turtles specifically are very round eggs. They almost look like ping pong balls, but very round in shape. And all turtles, they'll come ashore or up onto the shoreline, dig a hole into sand or soft dirt, sometimes into leaves, lay their eggs, bury them back up. And they need to be able to do that in a place that the water isn't going to flood the nest. Because if the water floods the nest, it can cause the eggs to rot or die. The eggs need to kind of be in moist dirt, but not wet dirt, to where they can survive during their incubation. So depending on species, they will incubate underground in these holes that the mom turtles dig for between 45 days at the shortest to up to 18 months, which is an incredibly long time. Most are kind of more in the middle, typically around like 90 to 100 days for most turtle eggs. With the exception of one species called the brown tortoise. The mom lays the eggs and then she's done. She's out. She will take off. She will never meet her babies. They will never have any parenting to teach them how to live, to teach them how to find food. All of that is just instinct for all species of turtles, except the brown tortoise. She sticks around and she guards her nest. But to my knowledge, once they hatch, she's out then. So she'll stick around and guard them while they're eggs, but she still doesn't teach them anything about being a tortoise or a turtle. They are still on their own. Most turtles, once they first hatch, they have something called a yolk sac. So if you think of like a chicken egg, inside the egg, the yolk, the yellow part of a chicken egg, is all the nutrients that the baby eats while it's in the egg. So turtles have that in their egg as well. That's what helps them grow and develop into a baby turtle. And once they hatch, that is still usually attached to the baby turtle. And that sometimes takes a couple of days or two for it to kind of be absorbed by the new hatched baby turtle. And so sometimes they'll hatch and stay very close to the nest or not leave the nest until that yolk sac is absorbed. And then they'll go explore and try to find their life as a turtle newly hatched. So with turtles and tortoises, they rely on a very safe place to lay their eggs, and that is often a threat or a challenge to many species of turtles and tortoises, is that they lay their eggs, but then something happens, usually caused by people, that either destroys the nest or makes it very difficult for those eggs to hatch and babies to be born. But one of those things that they rely on is temperature. So the temperature kind of determines if those baby turtles are girls or boys. That is common for most species of turtles. And usually if it is warmer, that means that they're going to be girls. And in some species of sea turtles, especially around Australia and some of the studies they've done there, with warmer global temperatures on the rise, they have noticed that there are sometimes quite a few more girl sea turtles being born. And so it's becoming harder and harder during breeding season when they're adults for females to find a male to breed with as they come back to breed and then lay new eggs. It's sometimes a ratio that's like 10 females to 1 male kind of thing. So it's becoming a bigger problem as global temperatures continue to rise. With turtles and tortoises, about 1/2 of all species are threatened with being either vulnerable or endangered or critically endangered, with about 10 species being thought to be extinct in the wild. There are many threats for many different types of turtles and tortoises. Habitat loss is the biggest issue. As people continue to grow and expand our cities, we often will drain areas that are like swamps because that's not so pretty to look at, or it has a lot of bugs like mosquitoes and stuff. Sometimes they kind of stink a little bit. So we'll drain swamps, we'll pave over them, we'll put in a shopping mall instead, and that eliminates the habitat where all those animals, including the turtles, lived. But it will also disrupt a lot of places where maybe turtles come back to lay their eggs, like with the sea turtles as we build condos on the beach or a golf course, or even just hanging out at the beach, driving all-wheel vehicles across the beaches. That's been a huge trouble for a lot of sea turtles. Typically, similar things can happen far away from the ocean too. Off-road vehicles is one of the major issues with desert tortoises here in the United States, specifically in areas like Arizona, California, Nevada, and Utah, where the desert tortoise lives. Off-road vehicles are often a big threat to the tortoises, and especially to the newborn tortoises when they're just itty-bitty babies. So habitat destruction is a big threat for them. The other huge threat for many species is collection. People sometimes collect many different kinds of turtles and tortoises to be sold as pets. It's very rare that many species of tortoises, especially the really ornate, pretty ones, are often captured from the wild and not raised in a pet sanctuary setting. And many species around the world are traded illegally for the pet trade. And also many people in many parts of the world eat turtles or tortoises and also eat turtle eggs. So human consumption or collection for pets, and also sometimes for their shells that are made into jewelry, is a big threat for many species of turtles and tortoises. Other big problems are invasive species that will outcompete them for food or possibly eat them when they're little. There's a species of turtle that's actually a big problem to other turtles. And you may have seen this kind of turtle before. It's called a red-eared slider. They are native to southeastern United States. They have kind of very pretty heads with red stripes right behind what we would think would be their ears. That species is from the United States and can now be found globally on both North America, South America, Asia, Europe, Africa, and Australia now have feral or wild populations of red-eared sliders, and red-eared sliders can outcompete many of the native turtles, especially some of the smaller guys, for food resources, and will sometimes even try to go after baby turtles of certain species. Also, I already mentioned a little bit with warmer temperatures being a big problem for many species of turtles. Also with that, climate change in general has caused a lot of problems. Like we saw last year in Australia, the big fires, and earlier in that year, fires in California can destroy massive amounts of habitat. Many of those fires can be attributed to drought, which is attributed to climate change, as well as things like rising sea levels, warmer sea temperatures, the ocean coming in and flooding wetlands, which is critical habitat for many freshwater species of turtles. If the salt water comes in, that can destroy the plants that live there and kill the turtles themselves if the salt water stays in that area too much. So this is a lot of doom and gloom about turtles, and that half of them are facing major threats is pretty sad and pretty scary. But that is why things like World Turtle Day were created, to help raise awareness that these are problems, and also that there's a lot of ways that people can help. So specifically, as I looked around today at different organizations that are helping turtles, I noticed that there are hundreds of them. Pretty much every big size zoo in the United States has a program where they're either breeding turtles on site to help bolster their captive population, or they help out in conservation work, saving local endangered turtles, or many of them are also supporting conservation clear across the world in helping with other turtle or tortoise populations that are very threatened. Specifically in my work in working with turtles and tortoises in a zoo setting, at the Phoenix Zoo, I worked very closely with the Galapagos tortoises and Aldabra tortoises as an educator, but I also went in and helped do a lot of the feeding of them. And the Phoenix Zoo participates in breeding programs for both those giant tortoise species, as well as some of the smaller turtles that they have there at the Phoenix Zoo. Similarly, in Los Angeles at the LA Zoo, they work with a number of different kinds of turtles and tortoises, including the Aldabra tortoises again, and also the turtle that I posted earlier on the Facebook and Instagram profile that is called a fly river turtle, also called a pig-nosed turtle. Those guys are a freshwater turtle species from Australia that is listed as endangered due to habitat loss. And so LA participates in a breeding program for the fly river turtles, and I believe they've had multiple hatchlings over the years with them. They also specialize in some of the other turtle species and tortoise species, like radiated tortoises, which are a very critically endangered species from Madagascar, that big island off the coast of Africa. Very beautiful tortoise species, and in fact, earlier, it may have been in 2019, it may have been in 2020, there was a huge shipment of them that was confiscated, and I believe it was something like 60 or 80,000 individual tortoises were confiscated, being shipped to Asia, and so they were confiscated and then they needed new homes. So many zoos sent people to either help out to take care of all these baby tortoises, many of whom were in very sick or ill conditions, and also to help find them new homes and places where they can go, because you can't necessarily take a turtle or a tortoise and put it back in the wild right away. You have to kind of make sure it's healthy and that the place it's going in the wild is a healthy place for it as well. So the work of many zoos and aquariums are helping out. Oh, also the aquarium I worked for, the Aquarium of the Pacific, specifically works with sea turtles. They rescue local stranded and injured turtles that are green sea turtles that are found off the coast of Southern California. I was there when they did preliminary medical exam on a green sea turtle that they helped last year. She was found near a bike path in Southern California, and she had ended up swallowing some fishing gear and had a fish hook all the way down into her stomach and fishing line stuck in her throat that they then had to go in surgically remove. But because that was in there, she hadn't been eating very well, and she was actually underweight and dehydrated when they found her. So they did surgery, they removed the fish hook, and they were able to get her back to a healthy weight and then put her on a boat, drive her out into the ocean, and release her back into the ocean. So they do a lot of great work helping local stranded turtles here in Southern California. But they also help raise awareness about sea turtles throughout the world and ways that people can help out. So some ways that we can help out with turtles is, one, never buy anything that is made from a turtle, or if you want a pet turtle, look up adopting one from a local shelter for animals, or also a herpetological society. That's someone who specializes in reptiles. I know there's a big society in Arizona that helps adopt out turtles and tortoises that have been either abandoned or confiscated, and helps find them good homes. Also, sometimes turtle rescue organizations exist in many areas of the United States that you can also get a pet turtle from if you want a pet turtle. Better than buying one from a pet store, which you don't know where it came from and may have come from the wild. A big shout out today, our special shout out is going out to the Turtle Survival Alliance. They're a huge nonprofit organization. They are located in South Carolina. They have a huge compound where they have over 30 endangered and critically endangered species of turtles that they are working to breed, and they partner with many zoos in the United States to help arrange good matches genetically to help breed some of these endangered species. But they also do a lot of really important work in many of the range countries where many of these endangered turtles and tortoise species live. They've done a lot of work on the ground to help employ local people to help out in saving turtles and protecting turtle and tortoise habitat in many areas. So there's lots of things you can do. Also helping cut down pollution, especially plastic use, is a big way we can help out turtles, as plastic never fully goes away. It just keeps getting broken down into smaller pieces, and then it gets trapped in many of the food chains and also out in the ocean where many animals eat it. I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared with you today about turtles. I'll be posting more information up later today on the Facebook profile, and also full episodes of this Critter Chat will be uploaded onto Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And previous episodes of Critter Chat are also there, especially the giant tortoise and sea turtles are up there that I did earlier on. So check those out. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and share any of the Zoo Nerd content with family and friends who may enjoy it. And I'll be taking tomorrow off, so I won't be doing a Critter Chat tomorrow, but I will tune in again on Monday for another Critter Chat. Until then, be happy, be healthy, take care of yourselves. See you then. Bye.